Hola, buenas noches. Soy Silvia Garduño del periódico Reforma. Quería preguntar, bueno, en la reunión de los cabos, en la reunión de cancilleres, se le preguntó a Patricia Espinosa si México había considerado una ampliación del G20, es decir, que si México estaría a favor de que se incluyeran más países, y ella dijo que no, que México no está a favor de esto porque considera que el que sea un grupo pequeño favorece los acuerdos, favorece los consensos, favorece las negociaciones, y que precisamente ese había sido uno de los problemas que ellos habían enfrentado, por ejemplo, a nivel de Naciones Unidas. ¿Consideran que este es un punto válido? Es decir, que se puede pues entender que sí, pues evidentemente es más fácil llegar a acuerdos cuando son menos y cuando es un foro informal a una institución pues ya consolidada. Y por otro lado, también me gustaría preguntarles, hemos tenido nosotros entrevistas, por ejemplo, con Andrés Rosenthal o con Paul Martin, que incluso estuvo en el Think 20, y me parece que ellos sí tienen una visión de incluir más temas al G20 y de hacerlo más como un foro que aborde más temas de la gobernanza internacional que exclusivamente los temas económicos. ¿Ustedes notaron que exista pues esta posibilidad o que se esté moviendo hacia allá el G20? Gracias.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Álvaro. Muchas gracias a la Fundación Henry Boll. Y la curiosidad de esto, a veces, déjenme decir esto, me parece a veces que caemos en una especie de embrujo, que quedamos todos planteando lo que está bien, lo que está mal, de las decisiones que toma el grupo de los 20 y nos concentramos en eso. Sin embargo, hay muchos textos, hay muchos hechos contundentes que demuestran su mala voluntad con la humanidad entera. La humanidad, el 70% me imagino que ha de tener problemas económicos y seguimos planteando lo que está bien o lo que está mal de las decisiones del grupo de los 20. Entonces, más bien me enfocaría a una movilidad social que reaccione ante esas medidas, ante las medidas de los rescates bancarios que nuestro amigo y compañero acaba de decir que son rescates bancarios del erario público para las instituciones privadas. Ahí está Citigroup y México no se escapó de esa situación, lo cual es muy, muy triste y para ello debemos de reaccionar socialmente a nivel nacional y a nivel mundial. Eso es mi pregunta, lo que comparto, ¿no?
Hola, mi nombre es Lina. Voy a intentar hacer mi pregunta en inglés y es dirigida a Thomas. Thomas, the G8 is older than the G20, and I understand that there has been very little action or results from the G8 summits either. So why do you think that we can expect positive action from G20 in a nearer future, and how would such positive action look like? And the other issue is how long would this process, in your opinion, take?
Well, with regard to the positive outcome, I think there may be a misunderstanding. I said it's too early to yet come out with a final verdict on the usefulness of the G20. I think that at the moment they are in a crisis of identity, and there are strong forces within the G20 who want to really keep a very narrow agenda, just to say we are responsible for crisis management. And that's it in a very technocratic, financial, economic sense. But there are other voices, and of course also the expectations of the global public. I mean, in a way, I guess we're all sort of looking at the G20 that it now has become sort of a powerful club of nation states who, if they wanted, they could provide very important input and momentum for a genuine work on the problems. So I guess the G20, as much as they like to have a very low cover and be very technocratic, in reality they have taken on a key significance or key position within the global governance system, and they are still struggling with this. This is an ongoing process. I mean, nobody knows how they will deal with it, and the big question will be, are they ready to work on the problems by anticipation or by chaos? So are they ready for preventive action to really make significant shifts or contributions to global problems, or will they always be in a responding mode of sort of running after one crisis after the other? So we will see. I mean, what we can expect, or what I would hope we would see the G20 do, is to stabilize the world economy. And that's an important issue. I mean, if you think of the underprivileged and the poor people, they're not gaining, they're not the winners from economic chaos and disorder. So I think this stabilization function is important as a sort of service to all of us, as we see in Greek now when you have the chaos and the sort of breakdown of economic order, especially the poor that suffer from it. And the second function, referring to what I said before, that the G20 can provide, is to manage the power shift, to help us to move from a Western-dominated world order, which we have had since the Industrial Revolution, so for the last 200 years, to a new multipolar world, where other civilizations and cultures and regions of the world will have a much more important role. What we cannot expect the G20 to do, since it is a reflection of the existing power structures, they will not come up with a new development model, and they will not limit the power of big capital. They will not promote genuine democracy. They have no interest in that. So they need this constant critical and reflection and opposition from society. And I think a lot of this has to happen at the domestic level with the national political struggle, but of course also then these political forces can get together at the international level. I think what the point Nancy made is very important with regard to transparency. The G20 must understand that they are a very powerful club, and we're demanding accountability and transparency. But mind you, the big problem here, or the biggest problem, are the rising powers within the G20. You know, China, India, Brazil, they have problems with transparency. They have problems with civil society. They have problems with including sustainability criteria or issues in the development. With regard to the question on to expand G20, I think that's not really so important to include other individual nation states. What I think is very important to give the regional organizations from less well-represented world regions a good role. This is not happening. So African Union and the ASEAN, for example, that would be important if these regional organizations come in and they have a strong voice in that. I addressed the question on where does the G20 stand. Is it crisis management or turning into sort of the shaper, sort of more structurally oriented force of global governance? That's still very open at this stage.
Antes de comenzar este panel, platicábamos allá afuera y quedó interrumpida la plática con Thomas, pero coincidíamos en una cuestión, en que no va a haber cambio en el G20 ni en ningún otro lado si la ciudadanía, si los pueblos no presionan a los políticos para que haya el cambio. Los cambios no vienen de la buena voluntad de alguien angelical o de precioso discurso. Son procesos sociales que requieren necesariamente la presión, la participación social. Y no se han dado las condiciones en este momento, desde mi punto de vista, para que existan realmente los cambios. No es un secreto quizá para Nancy y alguna otra gente, pero el tema clave de regular las operaciones extrabursátiles, los OTC, es una de las cosas más difíciles de todo el sistema financiero, porque es el esquema más especulativo. Si han oído hablar de estas operaciones brutales que son de trillones y trillones y trillones de valores que le llaman nocionales. Una palabreja que por ahí se inventaron, pero que son el andar vendiéndole y revendiéndole e incluso apostándole al fracaso con otro tipo de swaps. Eso es el mayor control del sistema financiero especulativo o la desregulación. Cuando hablamos de transparencia, ahí esos son los momentos de transparencia. Si el sistema financiero que es controlado así directamente, los Estados Unidos e Inglaterra, como dos grandes polos que no únicos, esos son verdaderos problemas de transparencia, no los que tiene China o los que tiene Brasil o los que tiene México ni nada. Esos son exactamente la gran opacidad donde se mueve toda la maquinaria financiera. Existen niveles de fuerza en Grecia, en Francia, en otras partes, aquí mismo, pero no son suficientes para llevar todavía y alcanzar ese tipo de transparencia y reforma y cambiar las incapacidades que tienen. Mientras tanto, yo no puedo ser optimista de los resultados de eso. Pero eso no quiere decir que el mundo esté nada más centrado en eso. Ojo. Y es lo que acá está sucediendo en Sudamérica. Es decir, está habiendo otros cambios que ya no están en la esfera del G20. Y está habiendo otras modificaciones que no están en la esfera del G20, y ese es el mundo real también. No solamente es el superpoder. Ahí es donde digo yo, y con eso termino para no extenderme, es que necesitamos entender que el mundo no es el G20. Es todo lo demás. Y todo lo demás es más que cuando dicen, es que es el 70% del Producto Interno Mundial o del Producto Mundial Bruto. Sí, pero la mayoría de la gente, la mayoría de los recursos, la mayoría de todas las voluntades está en otro lado. Y entonces necesitamos los ciudadanos ser conscientes de que hay una fuerza que tiene que moverse para poder cambiar eso. Y, ojo, va a depender también de cómo cambie la elección en Estados Unidos, cómo cambia en Rusia, cómo cambia en Francia, y cómo cambia aquí, y cómo cambia en otros lados. El mundo no está detenido, ni se detienen los cabos.
The G20 is not going to expand. The point that Thomas made is really important, I think, which is that it's having a really profound identity crisis. And it's widely viewed as being a failure. And they can barely cope with the fact that people from, presidents and prime ministers from 20 countries come and they bring a gigantic delegation, and they have different values, different ethics, different worldviews, different languages, and the meetings are very unsatisfactory. Mexico called the very first meeting of foreign ministers the weekend before last, and many foreign ministers did not come to Mexico. Even Russia didn't even send a junior person to the foreign ministry meeting. There were only 8 foreign ministers that came, and there were 6 more that came at a junior level. and many of those were from non-G20 countries. Mexico has chosen to invite several. Every G20 president gets to invite 5 guests. And Mexico has invited Chile, Colombia, Spain, Cambodia, and Benin. And it's really quite sad that South Africa is representing the entire continent of Africa, and the government of Benin is not even participating. The government of Mexico has called the Foreign Ministry, and the Finance Ministry have called Benin and written Benin and gotten no answer. Benin is chair of the African Union, and they can't get an answer from the country. So there's this profound identity crisis, and some ministers don't want to participate, and some have little capacity to participate. So it's really not a pretty picture. And in terms of, would it be desirable for the G20 to grow in size? That's a different question. And I would make the case, as Thomas did earlier, that it would be better for the G20 to be accountable to the United Nations than to expand it. And one of the reasons is that the G20 is really not representing, the leaders and the prime ministers are not all representing national interests. They're representing financial interests. And so, you know, there's a class of individual, no matter what country we visit, that represents financial interests. And so it doesn't matter if you have the G7 or the G100, if all those ministers are representing financial interests, then they're going to make the same decisions. And so we very, very desperately need a diversity of opinion in the G20. One of the best examples of G20 failure is fossil fuel subsidies. At the Pittsburgh summit in 2009, all the G20 presidents and prime ministers said, we're going to remove fossil fuel subsidies. And so every once in a while I call one of the international organizations, how are you doing? Well, we haven't defined the word subsidy yet. Imagine. Because really we can't move to a green economy if we're subsidizing oil and gas, or nuclear for that matter. And I really like the question that you raised about moving from talking about right and wrong to social mobilization. And maybe I have a difference of opinion, I'm not sure. I need to talk to Alejandro more to see if we have a difference of opinion, I'm not sure. I think it's really important to get the documents out of the G20 so that we can prove to people, you know, that we're not just speaking rhetorical opinions. We know what's going on. Here's what's going on. And that's what mobilizes people when they know that their leaders are not being accountable. And we can prove that they're not being accountable or that they are being accountable with hard information.